running against each other. Back in 2016, Lindsey said something rather nasty on his flight to becoming the next president of the United States. So naturally, I did something that I shouldn't have done. I shared his personal cell phone number with the millions of people that happened to be watching that particular day as I made a speech, a very important speech. And I remember the number 202-228-0292 if anybody wants to give it a shot. His phone exploded. He said, I had that number for 20 years. His phone totally, I don't know what he did with it, but it exploded. That was the beginning of a friendship in a way. But it was Lindsey who had the last laugh, because while I blew up his phone all for one day, we became great friends, and Lindsey did not stop calling me for the next 10 years. It was not easy.
Welcome back. That was President Trump this afternoon paying tribute to the late Senator Lindsey Graham. And as we mentioned, the president, much of his cabinet, as well as lawmakers and world leaders, joined Graham's family and friends at the Washington National Cathedral to remember the South Carolina senator. And this was moments ago. The casket leaving the National Cathedral en route to remembrances in South Carolina tomorrow. A very somber moment there. And the ceremony was also held today at the Capitol. Senator's sister, Darline Graham, who is serving the remainder of his term and running for his seat in South Carolina, visibly emotional as his casket arrived at the Capitol. In the Capitol Rotunda, lawmakers honored both Graham's military service and his more than 3 decades in Congress, and there were tributes from both the vice president and the Senate Majority Leader.
I choose to remember Lindsey Graham as a man who could disagree with you without being disagreeable. I choose to remember Lindsey Graham as a person who could fight with you on one issue, but fight for you on another issue.
During the work week here in Washington, a lot of us are away from our families, so we often get together in groups for dinner. And let me tell you, Lindsey was always the first call. And to Lindsey, rest in peace, my friend. I look forward to the days when you make us all laugh again.
Today, we're also getting a rare behind-the-scenes look at the senator's life. Documentary filmmaker Alex Holder spent more than 4 years with Senator Graham, right up until his death, recording hundreds of hours of his remarkable day-to-day and capturing key moments that offer a glimpse into his influential role on major foreign policy events, like these revealing scenes just days after the beginning of the Iran war. Take a look.
Look what we've done here.
I know.
I almost cried.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how long have we been pushing this?
Well, I mean, you've been pushing this for years, right?
Right. It's here. I talked to Trump this morning.
It's literally...
Oh, he's Jack.
Yeah.
It's the best thing I've ever done. He loves blowing stuff up. Hey, BB Lindsey.
Hey, Lindsey. How are you?
I couldn't, I'm just so impressed. Glad to be your friend.
I'm glad you are, my friend.
I'm going to meet with the president this weekend. I'm going down to Doral. I'm going to try to get him to join with y'all in Lebanon, to maybe fly some with you. Would you like that?
Kristen Welker recently sat down with documentarian Alex Holder, who was attending Graham's funeral today. She began by asking him what it was like to hear the news of Graham's sudden death while the documentary was still in the midst of filming.
It was very shocking. I mean, we were with him just a few days before. He actually sent me a text how happy he was that the White House had just signed off on his sanctions bill. He'd just come back from Ukraine, and then we find out this news. I mean, it was tragic, and our plan was to keep filming all the way until the midterms.
You had, Alex, absolutely unprecedented access to him. We're talking 4.5 years. Take us behind the scenes. What was that experience like to have that view of such a dynamic figure in the Senate?
Yeah, it was absolutely fascinating. I think there was no way I would possibly have imagined that we would have got the access that we ended up getting. It takes time, but the truth is that to think that we would be in Saudi Arabia multiple times, in the Crown Prince's residence with him, at high-level meetings. We weren't just like sort of going up to the front door and then it would be closed. We were going in the room and capturing some of these fascinating, consequential moments in some of the most important issues in really modern history. I mean, Ukraine, Russia, we were with him there with President Zelensky. The Iran war with the US and Israel, we're there. I think I was probably in Israel with him, I don't know, more than 5 or 6 times. Saudi Arabia, twice. And he's trying to also deal with the Israel-Saudi reconciliation. And then we're obviously with him in DC. And it was really, there was no limits. I mean, he was incredibly open to allowing us to capture private conversations, phone calls.
What did you learn about Senator Graham from those interactions that you got to witness with these world leaders?
I actually call Lindsey the Secretary of the State for the Senate. I mean, he really was, just such an important, figure. Controversial, complicated, very funny, and I think to me, he proved that you can disagree with somebody's politics, vociferously, but you can still also have a very good relationship with them as well.
You talk about his sense of humor, and I think that one of the characteristics that I will remember most is how much he loved what he did. He loved being a part of the debate. He loved meeting with these world leaders and trying to shape foreign policy. How much was he driven by his passion, his love for what he was doing?
Absolutely. It was his life.
Yeah.
There was nothing else except what he was doing day in, day out. I mean, from the text messages, the phone calls, flying around. He used to sleep in the aisle of the plane because these planes don't have lie flats. So he would literally sleep with a sleeping bag in the aisle of these planes, and people would have to step over him to go to the bathroom during these long flights. I think one of the very interesting things I noticed with him was actually he didn't really take it for granted. He actually found the fact that he was probably one of the closest people to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia unusual. He found it actually quite funny, and he would say, how is it possible that a senator from South Carolina is here in Saudi Arabia at 2 o'clock in the morning with the Crown Prince? So he didn't take it for granted, and he found what he was doing, very important, but also very fun. And he called this process a game. So we've kind of termed the documentary Lindsey's Game at the moment.
I can't wait to see the full documentary. I want to play a clip from it. This was from one of the last times that you were with him, March 11th, 2026. Show a little bit of what you captured.
I'm tired, guys. I got a lot of pressure on me right now. Trump has got me involved in Ukraine-Russia level. This war can't go on much longer. We're going to lose support. Trump is losing support. The war fatigue is real. And I don't want to get a deal when everything collapses. I want to get a deal when we still have some leverage. And right now we still have leverage.
Alex, you can hear the exhaustion in his voice there. What do you take away from that moment and his insistence? The United States had to get a deal to bring this war to an end. It was his life's work.
Yeah, no, I remember that very clearly. He had just come out of the Senate. We were going in the car. And, it's one of those few moments with him. I mean, he knew that we were always filming, right? And so every now and then you would get these fascinating, this color of really what's going on, inside, right? And after we left that evening, I said, are you sleeping? And he said no, he's not. He was also surprised that other senators and other colleagues were not helping him in the various things that he was dealing with. So there was no question he felt under pressure.
He died so suddenly. You hear the exhaustion in his voice there. Did you have any sense that there was anything wrong medically? Did he complain about anything medically? He
would always, there were times where he would make fun of his mortality. So he would always say things like, can't die now, or, still got a lot to do before the end of 2026. We were with him just after his primary victory in South Carolina the day after, and in a bagel shop that he used to go to when he was a kid, when he was a student, at university. And so we were filming there, and he really looked exhausted. And again, he made that point about, there's a lot to do before the end of 2026. In a
remarkable twist, his sister, Darline Graham Nordone, has stepped into his seat. She actually says she wants to run for his seat at this point in time. But you captured this really remarkable moment between the two of them. This is December of 2022. I want to play a little bit of that and get your reaction on the other side.
So where do you think the politics came from? I mean, if your parents weren't particularly political, where do you think your brother's sort of political genesis started from?
Well, I know he originally wanted to be an Air Force pilot, but because of his hearing issue, he couldn't do that, so he chose a different route. I don't know. When did you get interested in politics?
I think history.
History?
Yeah, I remember when President Kennedy was assassinated, the first time I ever saw my grandmother cry. And I was intrigued about somebody I didn't know that could make my grandmother cry. And the power of that event, how it affected the whole family, the whole country. So as a kid, I was intrigued, like, what is it about that person, that job, that gets so many people, emotionally involved?
What do you think your parents would make of your brother for that?
Oh, they would be so proud. Yeah, especially my mom.
What do you reckon specifically?
Well, I can just remember when he went away to college, how proud she was of him. And he would take the bus home. The bus stop was up the street. And the days he would come home from college, she'd be like, Lindsey's coming home today. And I would get so excited, I would run up to the bus stop and get him. And we'd come home, and I remember just watching the look on her face when he would walk through the door. So, yeah, my parents were very proud of him. The first in our family to ever go to college. I mean, I don't think they even finished high school.
It's just remarkable to see the relationship between Senator Graham and his sister. They were incredibly close. They lost their parents at a relatively young age. What did you learn about their relationship?
So after that, the rest of that clip, he actually says a very, Lindsey Graham comment. He goes, "It sounds like you're writing my obituary right now."
Wow.
Wow. He was a private guy, so I think actually filming that was really interesting to see that dynamic. He was very close with his sister and with her children, and I think he would be very proud of the fact that she stepped in. I mean, that's my own personal opinion. And they didn't talk politics, the two of them.
They didn't?
No, I mean, I actually asked, one of the other questions I asked is whether or not they spoke politics, and they didn't really discuss. I think she was more concerned about, the amount of time that he was spending traveling. So I think there was a lot of affection, for sure, towards him from her.
It's fascinating to see that window into their relationship. So you think he would be very proud of the fact that she stepped into his Senate seat. She's running for re-election, or for election, I should say. And politics is tough. It's a tough sport. Undoubtedly, he'd be supportive, but would he be concerned too, do you think, a little bit for her to enter this arena?
I think so, yes. I think so. Yeah. I think he just had a certain way about him where the criticism, he could brush it off. He actually found it very funny. I used to read tweets that people would say to him, critical tweets, and his approach towards those tweets were quite amusing. He just really didn't actually care about. He would call people, spirited if they if they argue with him. He knew what he wanted. He really was a very political player.
And just finally, overall, what do you think the legacy of Lindsey Graham will be?
A consequential political player in some of the most important and significant political and geopolitical events in modern history. As to how history will judge him, we don't know yet, because we don't know how these events will unfold. But I think for sure how important he was.
Well, Alex Holder, it's a fascinating and insightful conversation, and the clips alone are just extraordinary. I'm really looking forward to seeing the full documentary. Thank you for being here to help us remember Senator Lindsey Graham. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And our thanks to Kristen and Alex Holder for that conversation.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.